They came to poison our world, not with bombs, but with biology. Admiral Zonik hissed through his respirator, voice thick with contempt. We'll learn what happens when primitives refuse proper subjugation. In the dim chamber beneath a dying star, the Galactic Syndicate's War Council plotted humanity's extinction, tentacles curled in satisfaction as Admiral Zodok scanned the deployment schedule. Every column a countdown to collapse. Beside him, their chief biologist quivered an anxious wraith of a creature, as if fear itself had put on skin. It's ready, the scientist croaked. Venom refined, adaptive, lethal. Oceans will run purple. Their air will sting. Release the pods. And so they did. At precisely 300 hours, Earth time, the first bioweapon pods tore through the clouds and plunged into the Pacific. There was no fanfare, no lights. Just silence and then a ripple, as something not meant to exist began to multiply in our waters. It was fast, it was venomous, it was hungry, months passed. In a small apartment, 5 flights up, a young woman from Seoul fought gravity with bags full of groceries. Her name was Yuna, and by the time she made it to the kitchen, her legs were jelly and her stomach was howling. She didn't look like a threat. Her kitchen was bubblegum pink matching appliances, pastel utensils, and plush mascots perched beside the spice rack. But behind the cute, there was steel. She was starving but smiling. She touched up her makeup, took a breath, and went live. Hello, my lovely viewers. Today we're having something special. Something that's never been on any menu anywhere. She hoisted the creature onto her cutting board. It writhed, twitching, as if trying to escape fate. She called it the devil squid, others had called it worse. It hissed, it pulsed. Its tentacles searched the air like blind snakes. Yuna didn't flinch. The trick with new seafood, she said, dodging a flailing appendage, is understanding the anatomy. This sack, that's poison. Let's not eat that. The knife came down, the thing screamed. It wasn't a sound anyone should ever hear. It cracked wine glasses. It traumatized a neighbor's cat so badly it refused to meow for weeks. Yuna grinned. Ooh, listen to that crunch. Fresh. Light years away, junior analyst Quiven nearly dropped her console. Sir? I think you should see this. The supervisor drifted over, form coalescing with unease. What is it? It's a human broadcast. Food prep. But they're eating it. The screen lit up with horror. There she was, Yuna holding up a slice of raw alien meat, still twitching, still glowing faintly blue. See that shimmer? That's the bioreactive gel layer. Adds a little zing. Now just a dash of sesame oil, maybe some gochujang. Chewed. Post. Oh wow. It's like Unibut punchier. There's a weird tingling. Probably the venom. Hold on. I'm trying it with rice. The supervisor emitted a noise somewhere between a scream and a prayer. Get the Admiral, he rasped. Now. Admiral Zodok watched in silence. His war council frozen behind him. She's eating it, he muttered. A tactical officer blinked, wide-eyed. She's eating it, with sauce. Yuna was already moving on. Now you can grill it, but I like it raw. The texture's wild like an oyster and a ribeye fell in love. Oh, and the ink? Total neurotoxin. But diluted with soju? Incredible marinade. The chat below her stream was chaos. I tried it. Hospital. Hospitals are for cowards. My tongue can see colors now. Juna food truck. When? Quiven's voice trembled. 20 million viewers, sir. And rising. Humans they're going to fish markets, asking for the screaming squid. The Admiral's skin shifted color green to gray to something sickly and unnamed. This is an isolated incident, he snapped. A fluke. An analyst coughed. Sir, new broadcasts coming in from everywhere. New York, Tokyo, Lagos, Sydney. They're calling it alien sushi, arguing over beer pairings. Back on screen, Yuna waved cheerfully. Remember when life gives you monster squid? You make monster sushi. Tomorrow deep fried. Let me know in the comments. Yuna out. Peace sign. Stream over. Tentacles marinating in a bath of soy sauce and oblivion. The Admiral turned cold. Phase 2. Deploy the Drake Hounds. Land targets only. Somewhere they won't. Where, sir? He consulted a human map. This place. Florida. Swamps. Primitive. Perfect. Quiven made a sound. What? Nothing, sir. Just, I've been reading the cultural files. You might want to deploy them fast. It wasn't fear in her voice. It was dread. At dawn, the drop pod screamed into the Everglades. Armor plates split open. Drake hounds emerged 9 feet tall, all claws, fangs, and bio-enhanced slaughter. Their scales shimmered like active camouflage, eyes glowing like molten knives. They didn't howl. They didn't need to. They just moved silent, swift, and lethal. Within hours, they had claimed territory, left pheromones that could drive most mammals mad. Bushmamas. Ricky Thibault sipped a morning beer on his airboat and spotted the tracks. Not gator, not boar, not python. Abby Dunn dipped in sriracha, he muttered. Eritsky smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. He pulled out his phone and opened the group chat labeled Glades Militia. It's not a cult. By noon, 17 airboats screamed across the marsh. Jimbo brought an elephant gun from the Korean War. Big Sue strapped on a crossbow that once split a tractor. The Ramirez twins rigged a net launcher they borrowed from Fish and Wildlife. $20 says Python. Jimbo offered. Ricky didn't answer, just pointed at a tree that had been sliced clean in half. Pythons didn't do that. It began the way these things always do, with a press release and quiet panic. Limited containment anomaly, they called it government. Speak for, whoops, the aliens let slip some kind of genetically engineered hellhound into the Everglades. There is no cause for alarm, which is exactly what you say when you're hoping people don't look up the word Drake Hound. Turns out, the Syndicate's idea of psychological warfare involved seeding bioweapons into highly reactive population zones to cause civil breakdown. They thought Florida was the perfect test bed. They weren't wrong, just not for the reasons they expected. By the time official agencies showed up, the Glades Militia had already formed. Membership requirements: own at least 1 airboat, a deep mistrust of pants, and enough firepower to arm a small nation. Their leader, Ricky Thibault, a swamp-born philosopher king with a smoker made from a repurposed septic tank and a lifelong vendetta against invasive species. Big Sue. Okay, so what's the plan? Ricky, same as always. We find it, we kill it, we grill it. Jimbo, hell yeah, brother. Someone shouted, and suddenly everyone was chucking weapons and cracking beers. They found the first Drake Hound, sunning itself on a mud bank. Its scales shifted to perfect swamp camouflage. It would have been invisible if not for the thermal scope. Jimbo had definitely not stolen from the National Guard. Jimbo, there, 2 o'clock. Big bastard. The creature's head snapped up, nostrils flaring. It had smelled them. Its mouth opened, revealing 3 rows of teeth designed to shear through tank armor. Big Sue, dibs. She fired. The crossbow bolt caught the Drake Hound in the shoulder, punching through scales that should have been impervious. The creature's roar shattered windows 3 miles away in Coopertown. Then it charged. The fight lasted 4 minutes and became legend before it was over. The Drake Hound moved like lightning, like hell, with overgrown claws that made a mighty pretty necklace. Its claws carved through aluminum boat hulls like tissue paper. Its tail strike sent Jimbo cartwheeling into the mangroves. But the Glades Militia had something the Syndicate's bioengineers hadn't accounted for. Generations of Phidian energy distilled into pure, stubborn refusal to die. When the Drake Hound lunged at Big Sue, she didn't run. She grabbed its jaws with both hands and held on, screaming obscenities that would have made a Marine blush. The Ramirez brothers got the net over it, while Ricky jumped on its back with a machete, looking for weak spots in its armor. Someone, the belly, get his belly. The creature thrashed, its designer metabolism burning through energy at an unsustainable rate. It had been built for quick kills, not prolonged wrestling matches with humans who thought gator wrestling was a legitimate sport. When it finally stopped moving, there was a moment of silence. Then Jimbo, covered in swamp mud and missing half his shirt, raised his beer. "Jimbo, meat's back on the menu, boys." The cheer that went up could be heard in Miami. The video went viral in 6 hours. Bubba's alien barbecue blowout featured a shirtless man in cargo shorts demonstrating proper Drakehound butchering techniques. "Ricky, now you want to get in here between the scales. See that? Like filleting a fish but angrier. The meat's tough, so you want to marinate it overnight. I'm using bushlight and gator piss, but you can substitute with Cororas if you fancy." The comment section was a masterclass in human adaptability. User 1, pro tip. The venom glands make great hot sauce. User 2, anyone else notice it tastes better if it dies mad? User 3, my kid wants one as a pet. User 4, we cannot let Florida have all the good meat. Within days, hunting parties spread across the South. Texas responded with characteristic excess, organizing the Drake Rodeo and Barbecue Festival in Huntsville. Louisiana chefs began experimenting with traditional Creole preparations. Mississippi declared a state holiday. The aliens monitoring from orbit watched their perfect predators reduced to carnival food. Cuivin, they're comparing recipes. The one called Mimar has posted a video titled "Dragon Hound Gumbo like my grandpappy used to make it." She appears to be crying with joy while stirring the pot. "Sir," she added, "Drake hounds haven't been released long enough for a woman of her age to have a grandpappy do anything to our specimens." I don't know what she's talking about. On screen, an elderly woman in a floral apron lovingly added okra to a bubbling pot of what used to be the Syndicate's finest warrior beast. Mimar. Well, the meat's tough, but it reminds me of the gator my papa would catch during the Depression. You just gotta cook it low and slow. With love, and Tony Chakiers. Lots of Tony Chakiers. Admiral Zardok's tentacles had gone rigid. Zardok. How many Drakehounds remain of the initial 10,000 deployed? Cuivben. Approximately 6. Zardoks. 6,000? Cuivben. No, sir. 6 total. The Texans are keeping them alive for something called a county fair. A junior officer burst into the command center, his carapace clicking with panic. Junior officer, "Admiral, the humans have started a streaming service. It's called Meal Team 6, and it's just them hunting our bioweapons with commentary." On the secondary screen, a man in tactical gear was stalking through a swamp, whispering to his camera. Rick on camera. "All right, y'all, we got fresh sign here. See that track? That's a big boy. Probably 800 pounds. Now, what you want to do is come at them from downwind. They got good noses, but they can't smell for shit if you've been drinking. Pro tip from your big boy Rick." Admiral Zardok watched his perfect killing machines products of millions of years of directed evolution and genetic manipulation reduced to entertainment. Zardoks. "Prepare my flagship and summon the honor guard. We end this personally." Cuivben. "Sir, perhaps we should reconsider. The humans seem to have an unusual relationship. They're primitives who lucked into spaceflight. They haven't even achieved a unified planetary government." Zardok. "We are the Syndicate. We have conquered 1,000 worlds." Cuivben. "Yes, sir. But those worlds didn't have cooking shows." The Admiral's chromatic skin flashed through 17 shades of rage. Zardok. "Set course for Earth. Target, this Bass Pro Shop in Arkansas, where they're holding their Unity celebration. We'll see how they fare against warriors instead of animals." As the fleet prepared to depart, Cuivben pulled up the Earth Cultural Database one more time. She searched for Human Food Culture, emotional eating. Why humans are like this. The results made her emit a subsonic whine of concern. She looked at the eager honor guard boarding their ships, weapons gleaming, ceremonial armor polished to mirror brightness. They had no idea what they were flying into. Quiven, maybe. I should update my resume. The site of the Earth Alien Unity Barbecue Cook-Off had once been Arkansas's largest Bass Pro Shop. Now it was something else entirely, part refugee camp, part tailgate party, part interspecies diplomatic summit, and all human chaos. Smoke rose from 100 makeshift grills. But it was more than smoke. It was memory made visible, carrying stories in every molecule. The scent of charcoal and mesquite mingled with Goku Changen, lemongrass with Sfrito, and berbere with flavors that had no names because they hadn't been invented until that morning by someone who thought, what if we add some miso to the barbecue sauce? Quiven stood transfixed by the scene. She'd come to study how humans were adapting to alien meat at the molecular level, but found herself watching something far more complex than that. Quiven? Fascinating. The olfactory response is triggering massive hypothalamus stimulation. Unikim's viewers watched her work with speed and confidence, but her hands moved with inherited memory. Juna, my grandmother used to say, every dish carries the hands that taught you. See this folding technique? She showed me when I was surrendering the war, when they had to make food stretch. She paused, inhaling the familiar sesame scent. Juna, now I'm using it on space squid. She would have laughed so hard. I miss her a lot. I'm glad to share a piece of her memory with you all. Across the field, Ricky Thibault's massive smokera, repurposed shipping, container-belched aromatic clouds that drew people like moths. He had driven 16 hours, straight from Florida, his truck bed full of draken meat and his grandfather's rub recipe written on a bar napkin and guarded like a state secret. Ricky, you smell that? Lifting the lid, the scent hit like a physical force pepper and brown sugar, vinegar tang, and meat so tender it was falling apart. 3 people immediately started crying. Older woman, oh, that's not just meat. That smells like Sunday. Like home. Like my daddy's still alive and we're all together. This was happening everywhere. The molecular structure of alien bioweapons was being transformed into something else, into community. Next to the drink station, because humans will make a bar out of anything, Aaron Jones was explaining the chemistry to a group of fascinated college students while mixing what he called drainhound venom margaritas. Aaron, so here's the thing. Humans are the only species we know of where taste and smell bypass the thalamus and hit the limbic system directly. Know what that means? Student, we're weird? Aaron, we're time machines. Every flavor is a memory waiting to happen. Every smell is a story. These aliens thought they were sending us weapons. Instead, they gave us new chapters. The crowd had grown. A Pakistani grandmother was teaching her granddaughter to fold samosas using drainhound filling. Veterans compared notes on which parts tasted more like MREs and whether that was good or bad. Children darted between legs, stealing bites and creating flavor combinations that would horrify traditionalists, but somehow worked. At the center of it all, something beautiful and strange was happening. Traditional enemies were sharing grills. An Armenian baker showed a Turkish chef how Cthulhu's Inc. made incredible bread. Mexican and Tex-Mex cooks reignited their eternal salsa de batnao, featuring alien peppers that grew from drake droppings. A priest stood beside a rabbi watching the chaos. He smiled, said it reminded him of loaves and fishes, but instead of a miracle, it was just people doing what they do, finding connection through food. The music shifted K-pop to Johnny Cash to something with way too much accordion. No one complained. Bodies moved in patterns that looked random but weren't. Grills to tables, strangers to friends, friends to family. A woman ground spices with pride. 27 ingredients in her mother's guacamole, 4 kinds of chocolate, and now Cthulhu's ink for color. Her mother used to say food was love you could taste. Now even Alien horrors were part of that recipe. They'd given humans new ways to express love. In orbit, the analyst's voice trembled as she called out to her commander. Serotonin levels, oxytocin, dopamine spikes. The entire gathering pulsed with synchronized joy. She scanned again. These weren't just people eating, they were creating culture. Memories, mythology, over alien meat. The supervisor scoffed. Food was fuel, that's all it had ever been. But her data said otherwise. Mirror neurons firing in sync, pleasure centers glowing like stars. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving, binding terror to joy. She whispered the obvious truth. We've given them mythology. The supervisor paled. How do you fight a species that turns existential threats into potluck dinners? The sky darkened. The galactic syndicate had arrived. Warships descended like angry thunderclouds. Gravity drives rattled beer cans and made grills shiver. The music died. Conversations froze. Even the children stilled. For a moment, the only sound was meat sizzling. The flagship opened. An honor guard emerged 12 feet tall, armor shifting with menace, weapons humming with old blood. At their head stood Kanak, conqueror, warlord, crowned in living metal, eyes scanning for fear. Instead, he found barbecue smoke. He roared declarations of doom, demanded surrender, reminded them of the plagues he'd unleashed. A voice from the crowd thanked him for the seafood. Recognition rippled through the humans. Oh, him, the guy who sent the meat. Someone lifted a beer in salute. Another shouted that the squid stuff slapped. Kanak faltered. His senses caught chemical chaos. Impossible spices, neurochemistry of happiness, neural networks shimmering with collective memory. He bellowed again. Bioweapons, instruments of annihilation. The humans nodded. Yeah, and delicious with sriracha. Kanak's eye twitched. His war code couldn't parse this response. His threat matrix broke under the weight of unsolicited gratitude. Someone offered him a plate? Fusion, they called it. Cthulhu's with gochujang glaze, honey from backyard bees. A touch of venom neutralized, of course. All umami now. He tried to reassert dominance. Raised a plasma cannon. The crowd didn't flinch. They offered him vegan options instead. In orbit, the analyst recorded the madness they were feeding the enemy. Ritualistically, intentionally, with kindness. She documented synchronized generosity in response to violence. Species-wide empathy, expressed through shared meals. An old man stepped forward, said his name was Jerry, just a mechanic, grandfather, keeper of his late wife's recipes. He held a plate of brisket like it was a sacred offering. 14 hours over mesquite, dry rubbed with love and spite, his wife's recipe. Dolores, gone now, but present in every bite. Jerry said, humans don't eat to survive. They eat to remember. He stepped closer to the warlord, unafraid. His hands trembled, but his voice was steady. When we share food, we share ourselves. Dolores is in this brisket. My grandmother's in the cornbread. My daddy's in the way I hold these tongs. Now your monsters are in here too, turning into memory like everything else. Kanak's senses screamed. Grief, joy, memory, all tangled in the same man. The crowd held its breath. Smoke curled around them like incense. Jerry offered the plate again, said his wife used to feed anyone who needed it. That food was love made edible. The syndicate had sent monsters. The humans had made them dinner, but put humans around a table. Give them something to share. They become something else. They become family. All of them, even the weird ones, especially the weird ones. Eyes welled with old memories and new revelations. The monsters hadn't brought destruction. They had brought excuses to feed each other. Every time a creature landed, neighbors had shown up. Recipes had been tested. Marinades had become community science. Kids had bonded over debates grilled versus fried Cthulhu's. What had arrived as terror had transformed into ritual, and the ritual was feeding each other. The plasma cannon wavered. The translators struggled. Concepts formed in its algorithms that had no equivalents in the language of conquest. It tried. Ritualistic resource sharing for non-survival purposes enabling pack expansion beyond genetic boundaries, but that wasn't it. Not even close. Calories weren't the point. When Dolores was dying, speech had failed her near the end, but taste remained. So spoonfuls had done the talking. Her mama's peach cobbler, the first thing she ever cooked for her husband, that terrible casserole their daughter made when she was 8. Each bite had carried meaning, a conversation without words, a life distilled in flavor. She'd left this world with the taste of their first anniversary dinner on her lips. Somewhere, someone in the crowd started crying, and then more joined, the kind of tears that come from deep truth, the kind you don't wipe away because they're sacred. A smile followed, the kind shaped by love and loss in equal measure. And then came the question. One more time, the offer, simple and profound. A plate of brisket, the ghost of Dolores watching, no doubt, ready to haunt, if hospitality was the need even, to a 10-foot lobster with aggression issues. She'd have said to fix him a plate before he did something stupid. Silence held like a held breath. Smoke still drifted. The sky was wide. Someone's baby fussed, then quieted. And then a small figure moved. 7 years old, missing teeth, hair in pigtails. A paper plate clutched in both hands. The contents culinary chaos squid lizard and a scoop of mac and cheese. She held it out, arms straining upward. No fear, no flinch, just earnest intention. Sensors scanned her. She was no threat, but they couldn't scan what mattered. She had grown up in a world where nightmares fell from the sky and were turned into dinner. She saw only hunger, not danger. She believed, with a whole little heart, that mac and cheese could heal anything. She explained the plate. Tentacles from Mrs. Kim like candy, but spicy. Sauce by Mr. Ricky, she helped. Mac and cheese her own, her mom had helped, but just a little. No fear in her eyes, only concern. She saw sorrow. She offered joy. She'd learned from her grandpa, when you share food, you share happy. And this warlord looked like he needed some happy. Alma shifted behind him. The honor guard tensed. They had fought wars in burning skies, but none had trained for Thesa Child's offer of peace in the form of mac and cheese. The plate fell, swatted down, time slowed. Food met dirt, sauce splattered, hope shattered. The little girl stared at the wreckage. No tears, just confusion. She had made it special. Why had he ruined it? The crowd didn't gasp. They simmered. The broken plate wasn't just food. It was betrayal of something sacred, of belief. You don't make children cry at a barbecue. There was a rule older than any constitution. Someone cracked their knuckles. Others moved without needing orders. Flavortown banners flew, but the final straw wasn't fists. It was words. From orbit, from a ship, from a stunned analyst whose voice trembled with fury and disbelief. The warlord had rejected communion, not just food, not just kindness, but a holy ritual offered by a child. Notre poison, an invitation. And now he had declared himself food. What followed wasn't battle. Battles have rules, orders, strategy. This was older. It was instinct, ancient and collective. A species remembering all at once that if something refused to be a guest at the table, it might just belong on the table. The first swing came from Big Sue and a folding chair. The second came from the Ramirez brothers, who used their Welcome to Flavortown banner as a net. Someone started narrating like a cooking show. So, when tenderizing your space warlord, aim for the joints. Technique method. Notes were taken. Not for tactics for seasoning. Grills were reignited. One pitmaster called dibs on the marbled one. Another asked for marinade. Not chaos. Ritual. Not war, but preparation. They hunted through grocery store aisles most days, but today they hunted with purpose. An adage, shiotsu seresh, armor irrelevant. What mattered was how to crack the shell and preserve the flavor. Even as the fight raged, children were escorted away gently with promises of dessert. Music resumed, Fists flew in rhythm. Sweet Caroline played, and somehow it fit. At the center stood the warlord, and facing him, Jerry, a carving knife in hand. Movement deliberate, no rage. Just a man with a purpose, dodging plasma with the grace of someone who danced around a hot kitchen for 50 years, knowing the cuts, knowing the pressure points, not for pain. For tenderness, the warlord bled from places designed never to be breached. But this wasn't just combat. This was a story, a sermon. The problem hadn't been war. It had been misunderstanding. The invader thought humans were afraid, but they weren't. They were curious and hungry for meaning, for memory, for community, for a new recipe, a new story to tell at the next cookout. And now they had one, the only species foolish enough to see terror and ask if it goes with barbecue sauce, but also wise enough to make that meal sacred, to turn survival into a feast, and to turn enemies into flavor. You didn't send us weapons, you sent us communion. And that's why you lost, because you can't beat something that gets stronger every time it eats together. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When the smoke cleared, what remained of the Syndicate Honor Guard were huddled together, trembling in the center of what had once been their proud formation. Surrounding them were humans, already deep in debate over marinades and optimal cooking times. Please, one of the soldiers whimpered, translator crackling. We surrender. Just don't. Don't what? Yuna asked, her voice bright and her knife catching the light. Don't eat us. There was a beat of silence. Then someone snorted. Another chuckled. And within seconds the entire human crowd was roaring with laughter. Not cruel laughter, just the shared, irresistible joy of realizing how ridiculous the moment had become. Eat you, buddy. You ain't been marinating nearly long enough. Besides, we got standards. You gotta earn your place on our plates. These bioweapons, they earned it. They brought us together. You made a kid cry. That's just bad seasoning. Rayleigh had been found and comforted, her tears traded for a new plate piled high with comfort food. She stood near the trembling aliens, mac and cheese clutched in both hands. You can have some if you say sorry, she offered solemnly, with the quiet authority only a child can carry. But you have to mean it, and you have to share nice. Kanak wasn't among them. The warlord had fled mid-chaos, vanishing in the flicker of a personal teleport, leaving his soldiers behind. Someone in the crowd shook their head. Well, that's just rude. Left before dessert. No home training at all, muttered Aaron Jones, disappointed. Jerry ran a cloth over his blade, calm as ever. Don't worry. Universe ain't that big. And humans were real good at tracking down dinner. The next day, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 100 worlds argued over the human situation. The Syndicate delegation was conspicuously absent, having decided that any species capable of weaponizing cooking shows was simply too dangerous to confront. Quiven, who had submitted her resignation 6 hours prior, stood to deliver her final report. Her limbs folded neatly, posture a picture of weary professionalism. The bioweapons achieved full integration, she began. 100%. However, the results were unexpected. Explain, said the council elder, a being of pure, radiant plasma who had never consumed a meal in its billion-year existence. Quiven opened the data feed. The Cthulhu infestation had sparked the formation of 247 new community groups, nearly 0 recipe exchanges, and the birth of an international human organization called Squid Squad, dedicated to sustainable alien seafood farming. Coastal towns that had been on the brink of economic collapse were now thriving. Tourism had exploded. Several Earth governments were already lobbying for Cthulhu breeding grounds to be declared cultural heritage sites. The Drake Hounds had fared similarly. While still dangerous, surviving specimens had been partially domesticated and bred for what humans called county fairs. Monster hunting had become a cultural bonding ritual, complete with youth programs and mentoring circles. Elderly citizens now taught the young how to track, process, and cook Drakehound. Gang violence in several major cities had dropped by over half. Apparently nothing united a neighborhood like chasing space lizards with barbecue skewers. The council elder pulsed with confusion. These bioweapons were not designed to create social cohesion. They do, Quiven replied. If you eat them, the humans have a saying, the family that slays together stays together. Also, a shared meal is a shared life. Also, pass the sauce or catch these hands. They have many sayings. What about military casualties? 17 humans were hospitalized during first contact. All recovered. They now run the most popular food blogs on the planet. One of them hosts a children's show called Eat What Eats You. It won multiple awards. Before the elder could respond, every device in the chamber, screens, holograms, projectors flickered and changed. A pirated broadcast began, untraceable, unstoppable. On screen, Unikim smiled from a pristine kitchen. Beside her stood a man known only as Florida Man, revealed at last to be named Todd and Ricky's emotional support alligator, now sporting a bow tie. A banner fluttered behind them. Cooking with Cosmos season finale. Hello, Galaxy, Una said cheerfully. Welcome to a very special episode. Today's dish is something we only recently acquired. The main ingredient was terribly rude to a child, so we're going to prepare it with extra care. The camera panned to her cutting board. Across the chamber, representatives of 100 species made sounds of collective horror. When working with Warlord Brain, Una continued, utterly composed, you want to slice thin. It's quite tough otherwise. The flavor is interesting, kind of like uni, but with delusions of grandeur. Very rich in iron and irony. She demonstrated her slicing technique with ease. The texture's gelatinous. Quick sear works besto, lock in all those juices, and what our friend here called the souls of conquered worlds. Personally, I think it's just MSG. Todd leaned into frame. The trick is not to overthink it. I've had gator brain, pig brain, and now alien warlord brain. Honestly, they all fry up the same. This one's a bit tougher probably from all the scheming. The alligator bellowed, possibly in agreement. Una took a bite and considered. It needs acid. Ego makes it heavy. Lime juice cuts through that nicely. She squeezed the lime, then nodded in satisfaction. Much better. Bright, fresh, with a hint of megalomania. Someone off camera asked, what pairs with Space Tyrant? A nice Riesling, Una replied. Something sweet. Helps with the bitterness of defeat. The broadcast ran 20 minutes. By the end, 3 species had withdrawn from the Galactic Council entirely. 17 had entered defensive pacts. One began constructing a Dyson sphere solely to power planetary shields. Quiven turned back to the council as the screen faded to black. The scariest part, she said, is that this is now the most watched broadcast in human history. 3 billion viewers. The comments are all recipe suggestions. A new restaurant just opened on Earth. It's called Hostile Takeover. They serve only aggressive species. The elder's glow dimmed to a faint shimmer. So humans won, it said. By eating? Quiven nodded. They won by eating together. The bioweapons gave them something to gather around, hunt together, cook together, argue over. Every attack made them stronger. Every monster became a memory. Every death became a dinner. She pulled up the final frame of the broadcast. Una stared straight into the camera and smiled. Don't start none. Won't be none. But if you do bring your own sauce, we'll handle the sides. Back on Earth, the first annual Intergalactic Barbecue Memorial Cook-Off had drawn to a close. The alien meat had been rationed, frozen, shared. Recipes were traded like heirlooms. Children raised on Cthulhu, nuggets grew up, believing that monster squid was as ordinary as chicken fingers. Braley sat with a fresh plate, each item a gift from a different neighbor. Jerry Horvath had made sure she got extra mac and cheese and taught her his secret dry rub. It's love, he whispered. Don't tell the aliens that. You think they'll come back? She asked her mother. Her mother, watching Yuna's stream on her phone, smiled without looking away. Oh, honey, she said. After today, I don't think anyone's going to bother Earth for a long, long time. Brayley nodded thoughtfully and turned back to her plate. The Cthulhu really were better with sriracha. The cook-off faded, but the effects rippled across the world. In Seattle, former gang members traded Drayhound jerky recipes in community centers. In Tokyo, kindergartners learned math by counting tentacles. In Cairo, an old woman knocked on her neighbor's door for the first time in 30 years, casserole in hand. Decades of silence ended in a shared meal. Humanity had faced extinction, turned it into a potluck. They looked at weapons meant to end them and asked only one question. But is it good with garlic? And somewhere deep in Syndicate space, one exhausted analyst filled out her application for Earth's new intergalactic exchange program. Under dietary restrictions, she wrote, "None, willing to try anything once." They probably had good food at the office parties. After all, everything tastes better when you share it.